It started like any other ordinary evening. I was standing in the kitchen, mindlessly stirring the pot of pasta, when he came up behind me. His hand brushed my back gently, so casually it could have meant nothing. But it didn't. In that single moment, something shifted. My heart raced. Not because of fear, not entirely because of shock, but because deep down, I knew what that touch really meant. It wasn't the kind of touch you give a friend. It wasn't innocent. It lingered just a second too long, and the silence that followed said more than words ever could. Before I go any further, let me be honest, I never imagined I'd find myself in a situation like this. I had always believed in loyalty. In trust. In the sacred bond of marriage. But life has a strange way of testing people, often when you least expect it. And sometimes, the real betrayal doesn't come from the outside, it comes from the people you let closest to your heart. I was married. Still am, technically. And so was he, my husband's best friend, David. He was the kind of man everyone liked. Charming. Helpful. Always smiling. He had been around for years, and I had never looked at him twice. But that night, when he touched my back with that mix of familiarity and boldness, something cracked inside me. Not just guilt. Not just confusion. But a flood of questions I wasn't ready to face. You might wonder how a single touch could change so much. But sometimes, it's not just the action, it's the intention behind it. And David? He wasn't drunk. He wasn't joking. There was a look in his eyes when I turned around, a flicker of something I hadn't seen before. Desire. Boldness. Maybe even resentment. My husband, Adam, was out of town for a business trip. He had left the day before, trusting David to help me with a few things around the house while he was gone. Our sink was leaking, and David had offered to fix it. I didn't think twice. Why would I? He was practically family. That night, while he worked under the sink and I made dinner, it all seemed so normal. Too normal, in fact. Until that moment in the kitchen when his fingers brushed my back like a secret. I froze. I didn't know whether to turn away or confront him. 1,000 thoughts flashed through my mind, but none of them made sense. Did I imagine it? Was it just a harmless gesture? Or was this something bigger, something that had been building in the background without me noticing? I tried to act normal. Tried to breathe. But his eyes stayed on me longer than they should have. And then, without a word, he stepped closer, too close. That's when I realized, this wasn't just a coincidence. Something was happening. And it was only the beginning. I stepped back, pretending to check the pot on the stove, hoping he wouldn't notice the way my hands were shaking. My mind was spinning. What just happened? Was I overthinking? Maybe I was reading too much into a simple moment. But the way he stood there, not moving, not saying anything, it didn't feel innocent. It felt planned. David had always been helpful around the house. Whenever Adam needed a hand with repairs or setting something up, David was the first to show up. He'd been close to our family for years. We'd shared dinners, holidays, even celebrated birthdays together. I had always seen him as a friend. Someone trustworthy. Safe. But now, every memory I had of him replayed in my head with a new lens. Had I missed signs? Were there moments I brushed off that actually meant more? The strange thing is, David had never crossed any lines before. Not with words. Not with actions. He had always been respectful, until now. And maybe that's what made it worse. It was so out of character. So unexpected. And that made it even harder to figure out what to do. Should I confront him? Tell Adam? Or just ignore it and hope it didn't happen again? But ignoring it didn't feel right either. Especially because, after that touch, things didn't go back to normal. His tone changed. He started making small comments, nothing too obvious, just enough to make me question his intentions. Compliments that felt just a little too personal. Looks that lingered a little too long. And when he talked, he didn't just talk to me, he observed me. The following day, he showed up again. Said he forgot a tool. I let him in, trying to stay calm, pretending like everything was fine. But the way he smiled made my stomach twist. It wasn't a friendly smile. It was like he knew I was unsettled, and he liked it. I realized then, this wasn't just some accident. He was testing boundaries, seeing how far he could go. I kept thinking about Adam. How much he trusted both of us. He had no idea what was going on back home while he was away. And I didn't know how to tell him. I didn't even know if I should. There was no proof. No clear evidence. Just moments. Looks. Words laced with something unspoken. But something inside me said this wasn't the end. David wasn't done. And neither was this story. That night, I barely slept. Every creak in the house made me tense up. I kept replaying everything in my head, his touch, his stare, the way he stood so close without saying a word. My body was at home, but my mind was somewhere else, tangled up in guilt and confusion. I wasn't guilty of anything, not yet. But the way things were headed, I couldn't shake the feeling that a line was about to be crossed. And I didn't know how to stop it. The next morning, I tried distracting myself with chores. I folded laundry that didn't need folding. Rearranged kitchen drawers. Anything to avoid thinking about David. But then my phone buzzed. A message from him. Let me know if you need help with anything else. I can stop by after work. Just reading it made my pulse race. There was nothing wrong with the words. But there was everything wrong with the timing. I didn't reply. I couldn't. The silence would speak for itself. At least, that's what I told myself. But by 6 p.m., he was on my porch again, holding a wrench and a fake smile. He said he forgot to fix the cabinet hinge and thought he'd do it now. I wanted to say no. I almost did. But I hesitated, afraid of creating drama, afraid of being wrong, and maybe even afraid of what would happen if I let him in again. As he worked in the kitchen, I stayed in the living room, pretending to scroll through my phone. But I wasn't reading anything. I was listening. Listening for footsteps, waiting for signs, wondering how long this game of pretending could go on. I thought about calling Adam. Just hearing his voice. But how would I explain what was going on when I couldn't even explain it to myself? Then came the strangest part. Later that evening, I got a call from our neighbor, Mrs. Patel. She mentioned David had been over quite a bit lately and asked if everything was okay with the house. She said it lightly, almost playfully, but something about her tone made me wonder if others had noticed something I hadn't. Or maybe, something I was trying too hard not to admit. And just like that, the conflict grew deeper. It wasn't just about what David had done. It was about what he might do next. What I might do. And whether I could keep pretending everything was fine. The following day, I kept checking the clock, counting down the hours until Adam's flight home. I needed him here. His presence. His steadiness. I didn't know what I was going to tell him, or if I'd say anything at all, but I just needed to feel safe again. Everything around me had started to feel unfamiliar, even the walls of our home. And David? He wasn't backing off. That afternoon, another message came in. This time, it read, "Can we talk? Just for a minute. I feel like there's something between us." My heart dropped. It was no longer subtle. No more guessing. No more blurred lines. He had said it out loud, even if only through a screen. And now, I couldn't pretend anymore. I didn't reply. I didn't know how. My thoughts were loud, crashing into each other. If I pushed him away too hard, would he twist the story? Would he tell Adam first? I didn't trust him anymore, not just around me, but in general. He had crossed a line, and now I wasn't sure how far he was willing to go. I stayed inside, kept the doors locked, hoping he'd get the message. But just before sunset, I heard a car pull up. I peeked through the curtains. It was him. He got out, walked up like it was nothing. I didn't open the door. I watched him ring the bell once, then twice. Then he just stood there, like he was waiting me out. My heart pounded in my chest. I didn't move. I didn't breathe. Eventually, he left, but not before sliding something into the mailbox. I waited until it was dark to check. It was a folded note, handwritten. It simply said, "You felt it too. I know you did. We can talk when he's not around." I froze, gripping the paper in my hands. It felt like proof, like a trap, like a confession all at once. My world was spinning. He wasn't just being reckless, he was being bold. And now it wasn't just about avoiding him. It was about protecting my marriage, my peace, and my name. I knew Adam's flight landed in a few hours. I could almost hear his voice, feel his arms around me. But the question still hung heavy in the air: do I tell him everything? Or wait and see what David does next? Because one thing was clear now, this wasn't over. Not yet. The night Adam returned, I thought everything would finally feel normal again. When he walked through the door, suitcase in hand and that tired but familiar smile on his face, I felt a wave of comfort I didn't realize I'd been craving. I hugged him a little tighter than usual, held on a little longer. He didn't ask questions, just kissed my forehead and said, "It's good to be home." For a brief moment, I believed that maybe I could leave all the confusion and unease behind me. But that feeling didn't last. The next morning, while Adam was unpacking in the bedroom, I walked past the hallway where we keep our mail tray. That's when I saw it. The note. The same note David had slipped into the mailbox, now sitting right on top of the stack. My stomach turned cold. I had hidden it under a pile of magazines the night before. There was no way it should have been out in the open, unless Adam had found it. I picked it up slowly, pretending to glance through it again. I turned my head toward the bedroom door, listening carefully. Nothing. Just the rustle of clothes and zippers. Had he read it? Did he think it was just junk? Or worse, did he recognize David's handwriting? The uncertainty ate at me. Later that evening, while we were watching a movie, Adam turned to me and casually said, "By the way, David texted. He wants to come by this weekend. Said something about helping out with the backyard lights?" I stiffened. My throat felt dry. "Did he say why?" I asked, trying to keep my voice calm. Adam shrugged. Just that he noticed the back corner was a little dim last time he was over. He seemed eager to help. I nodded, pretending it was no big deal. But inside, my thoughts were spiraling. That wasn't about lights. That was about control. About pushing boundaries even further, this time right under Adam's nose. And the worst part? He had chosen to do it while Adam was home. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept going over everything in my head, his messages, the note, the way he kept showing up uninvited. And now this. He was no longer hiding it. He was daring me. Daring me to speak up. Daring me to see how far he could go before everything came crashing down. But then came the twist I never expected. While cleaning the garage the next day, Adam called me over. He had found an old box of tools we hadn't seen in years. As he dug through it, he pulled out a small black USB drive. "This must be David's," he said. "He was using it a while back when he helped install the security cameras, remember?" My heart skipped a beat. I had forgotten about the cameras. We never used them much, they'd been set up but never checked. I took the USB from his hand, suddenly wondering, what exactly had David recorded? Was something hidden in those files? Something he didn't expect anyone to find? And just like that, the stakes got higher. Because whatever was on that USB could change everything. I stared at the USB in my hand for hours. I couldn't bring myself to plug it in. What if it had proof of something real, something I couldn't unsee? And what if it had nothing? Just old files and camera settings? But the weight of it felt too heavy to ignore. Late that night, when Adam had gone to bed, I crept into the study, plugged it into the laptop, and opened the only folder on it. It was labeled simply, Cam Feed. There were several video files, each marked by date. My fingers trembled as I clicked on the one from 2 nights ago, the night David had come to fix the cabinet hinge. The footage was grainy, taken from the corner of our kitchen, angled just enough to catch the counter and part of the living room. I watched as David entered, tools in hand. Watched myself hovering near the stove, tense and distracted. Then came the moment. The touch. The hesitation. And then, the look in his eyes. It was all there, clear, calculated, and far from innocent. But it didn't stop there. As I scanned through more files from earlier days, I saw a pattern. David had been letting himself in at odd hours when Adam and I were out. Sometimes just for a few minutes, sometimes longer. Once, he even sat in our living room, drinking from Adam's whiskey bottle, just staring at our wedding photo. It was chilling. I felt sick. The next morning, I knew what I had to do. I showed Adam the video. My heart pounded as I watched his face turn pale. He said nothing for a long time. Just stared at the screen, jaw clenched. And then he whispered, "He's been planning this." Adam called David that afternoon, asking him to come over. I didn't know what Adam was going to say, but I stayed out of sight, hidden in the hallway. When David walked in, smiling like nothing had happened, I felt a chill run through me. But Adam didn't smile back. He walked over, handed him the USB, and simply said, "You need to leave. And if you ever come near my wife again, this goes straight to the police." David's face dropped. For a moment, he looked like he might argue, but then he caught a glimpse of me, standing behind the hallway wall. He knew. He'd been caught. He left without another word. We thought it was over. We tried to breathe, to move on. But a few days later, Adam got a call from work. Someone had emailed a complaint, an anonymous claim accusing him of workplace misconduct. The proof? Edited security footage that had been tampered with. That was the final twist. David hadn't just tried to get between us. He had planned something darker. And now, even after we'd exposed the truth, he wasn't done. He had taken it further, turning the tables, trying to destroy Adam from the shadows. And suddenly, we realized, the real story was just beginning. The email turned our world upside down. At first, Adam didn't want to believe it could be connected to David. But we both knew the timing wasn't random. We reviewed the security footage again, and sure enough, there were signs the files had been copied and altered. The USB David had left behind wasn't the only one he'd touched. He'd planned ahead, just in case. Maybe he knew we'd eventually confront him. Maybe he wanted insurance. Either way, it was clear he hadn't just wanted me. He wanted to ruin Adam. But instead of panicking, we acted. Adam took everything, our original footage, David's texts, the note, and brought it to his company's HR department. He calmly laid it out, explaining the full situation. At first, they were cautious, unsure. But once the IT department reviewed the metadata from the files and compared it with footage pulled from the cloud backup, the truth came to light. The edited clips David sent in the complaint didn't match the originals. It was fake. A setup. The company cleared Adam, and though the damage hurt, his reputation was intact. As for David, we filed a police report, attaching everything. The notes, the camera footage, even the moment he stood in our kitchen too close for comfort. It wasn't dramatic or loud. It was quiet. Legal. Precise. The authorities took it seriously, enough to launch a formal investigation. We haven't heard from him since. And that silence is something we've grown to treasure. Life didn't return to normal overnight. Trust had been shaken, not between Adam and me, but in everything else. In our home, in the people we thought we knew. But in a strange way, the experience pulled us closer. We communicated more. We were open about things we'd ignored before. We learned that protecting a marriage isn't just about love, it's about vigilance. It's about recognizing when something doesn't feel right and having the courage to face it. I look back now and realize how small the first signs were. A touch. A glance. A feeling I tried to brush off. But those little moments matter. Ignoring them gives the wrong people space to move in. If you ever feel like something is off, don't doubt yourself. Trust your instincts. They're often right. Our story could have taken a darker turn. But we chose to speak up. To protect each other. And that made all the difference. Because sometimes, the real betrayal doesn't happen with loud shouts and broken promises, it starts quietly, in plain sight. But so does strength. So does healing. And that's what truly lasts. This was our true story. One built on trust, tested by betrayal, but saved by truth. And if even one person sees the signs a little sooner because of it, then telling it was worth every word. #infidelity story, #truestory, #emotional drama, #marriage betrayal, #relationship trust, #caught in the act, #emotional suspense, #real life drama 23.